This is Rovin Remax. Remax Crossroads First Realty 3. I'm Linda Montgomery, and I'm roving around North Texas, highlighting all the people, places, and things that make this a great place to live and invest in real estate. Our guest expert today is John Allen with Community Insurance Advisors. John, I want to ask you a little bit about with the weather that's going on. Tell me how a buyer who's going to select insurance for his house is going to compare what I call apples and apples when he's comparing one insurance company or policy to another.
Okay, great question. I think the biggest thing that buyers want to do is consider three things when they're looking at homeowners insurance. The first is, do I have an all-risk policy or a named perils policy? The way you can tell is by looking at the policy form itself. If it's an HOA, that means it's a named perils. If it's an HOB or an HO3, that means it's all risk. And what's the difference? All risk means everything is covered unless the policy very specifically excludes some kind of coverage. Named perils means nothing is covered unless they tell you specifically that it is. So there's some discussion around this topic, but that's something very important. A lot of times the cheaper policies that you see, they're named perils policies, and they're cheaper because they don't necessarily cover everything. So it's very important that you understand that. We can talk about that in more depth. Second thing is you want to look at, do you have replacement cost coverage or do you have actual cash value, which is insurance code for depreciated coverage, okay? And if you have depreciated coverage, you might get somewhere in the neighborhood of 30 cents on the dollar maybe for a claim. Big distinction. Where do you see that typically? On a roof. If you have an older roof, oftentimes they're ACV roofs, so big deal, right? Third thing is you want to make sure you have all the water endorsements. And if you stay on message on those 3 points, that's a great way to figure out whether or not you have the compatible coverages. Yeah.
That is just excellent guidance. Do you see buyers make the same mistake over and over again when they are talking to an insurance company about what kind of policy? What would some of those mistakes be?
The biggest one I think is that people buy insurance based on price because they're afraid of the conversation. They don't know what questions to ask. They don't want to feel stupid, so what do? They just default to price. And they talk to a neighbor or a friend who said, well, I got my insurance for $1,000, so now they think $1,000 is the magic number. Each case is different, and you have to look at these criteria that you're considering, and most people don't ask that question. And a lot of times, the agent doesn't volunteer that information. So you need to just remember those 3 basic points, make sure you're getting answers to those. If you're not getting those answers, you should strongly consider moving on to a new agent or new company.
I was just going to say, then that means that the agent who is in the education mode, who really wants to sit down and talk with the client about how it all works,
right,
they're the people that you can trust the most. Wouldn't you agree with that?
That's exactly right.
Well, I appreciate your input on that. Of course, every situation is different, but every policy is different, and I think that you need to consult your own insurance advisor and real estate agent when the time comes.